Hey everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name's Furkhan Dandia and I'm a therapist. And today I'll be talking about something that I feel has become very taboo and I think is also very complex in nature, and that's the issue of addiction. And my understanding of addiction has continued to evolve as I've worked with people in the space. And what really came to the forefront for me was beyond substances, how addiction can manifest and the behaviors we engage in. And ultimately, it is this form of escape or to avoid pain and seek out pleasure, which can often be fleeting. But it's our inability to sit with the difficult feelings that come up. So I'm going to talk about some of the ways we can become more aware of it and how we can put our focus to the things that will really help. The first thing to talk about is the hierarchy of relationships. So hierarchy of relationships is very important because addiction can disrupt our relationships where we will prioritize substances or behaviors over meaningful connections. So then recovery starts with reordering this hierarchy. And when we reorder the hierarchy, we're placing our relationship with ourselves and our loved ones above and everything else. But then there's that spiritual component where our connection to our higher power is number one. And then everything starts to come after that. So then our relationship with ourselves. And when we're able to connect with ourselves in a better way, then we have capacity to connect with others. In the addiction space, we can often find it misleading where there's a lot of enmeshment in our relationships, whether it's with our family members, our friends, or even our spouses. When there's that enmeshment, we may think we're connected to them, but we're not, because we're seeking from them. We're putting all the information that we need to how to be outside of ourselves. We're not really looking inward. We're not connected to ourselves internally to understand what's going on. We silence that voice that's inside of all of us. And that's where that connection to the higher power can be so powerful, because a lot of people will seek out love in different ways. But what's really helped me in my spiritual journey is realizing that I'm already loved. The fact that I'm here, I'm already loved. So that's where it becomes really important. And then when we're able to put that relationship with ourselves and our higher power at the forefront, that's when self-compassion can come as the foundation. And then we can build trust with ourselves and then other people. And we're then able to navigate those situations where there's enmeshment by setting boundaries, which takes us to the second point of enmeshment. So let's discuss it. This is when boundaries between individuals blur. We can lead to codependency and unhealthy dynamics. So codependency has become very trendy, but it's important to realize where codependency can become an issue. And one of the things we talk a lot about in the addiction space is the Karpman's drama triangle. So you'll see a lot of people moving around that triangle when they're in that addictive space, and where enmeshment and codependency are really running the relationship. So people will often feel like the victim where they want to be rescued, or they'll become the perpetrator where they will often victimize others and then feel like they need to rescue them. And it could get really messy. And this is where those boundaries can get blurred. In the context of addiction, enmeshment can make it harder to break free from these destructive cycles. So the important thing is to get really honest with yourself, recognize these unhealthy dependencies, establish individual autonomy, and communicate openly. Breaking free from enmeshment means learning to support without enabling and focusing on our own healing as much as our loved ones' recovery. That's how we can then differentiate ourselves. And this is something I've talked about in the therapy space, where the goal is to have that differentiated sense of self. And when we're stuck in enmeshment, that's where things can get blurry. So talking through all of this, and as I mentioned earlier, it's important to reframe addiction. So addiction is just more than substance abuse. It can manifest in many forms, and I touched on some, whether it's relationship related, but it can also show up in work, food, social media, And when we reframe addiction, we start to see it as a response to unmet needs or unresolved pain, as I was talking about earlier. So then we realize when we're trying to escape. And nowadays, it's become such a problem where we are on autopilot. We'll just sit on our phone, scroll, jump from one app to the other, and not even realize how much time we spend. And sometimes we have to pull ourselves back. And this is where recovery tools are so important, whether it's journaling, meditating, taking that time for solitude where you're leaving technology behind. Otherwise, you can spend time and not even realize that there are things going on in the inside. And subconsciously, we're just seeking out escape. So it's important then to understand addiction as a coping mechanism without judgment for yourself or others, and really navigating that shame, because when we get stuck in shame, that's when we seek out these escape behaviors. But getting honest with yourself, recognizing the shame for what it is, and understanding where it's coming from. And that's where we address these underlying emotions, and we can replace the harmful habits with healthy alternatives. So then it's important as you ask yourself, why am I seeking to numb, avoid, or fulfill? By understanding the why behind the addiction, we can take that first step toward meaningful change. And then the last piece is the relapse prevention and paying attention to feelings. Now, we can get too caught up, and a lot of people will just focus on white knuckling and focusing on preventing relapse, but it's okay. I think we have to realize that there are going to be relapses, especially if we're trying to navigate these things and build new habits, building a new mindset, and not getting caught in the shame when relapse does happen. So relapse prevention is crucial, and many believe relapse happens suddenly, but it's often the result of unresolved feelings building up over time and paying attention to our emotions. So even if we feel like we're focused on preventing the relapse and white knuckling it, we may not be paying attention to our feelings and emotions. So it's important to take that time, whether it's mindfulness, identifying triggers and warning signs, building those emotional toolkits. I've touched on some, but it could be journaling, therapy, and support groups. Support groups are really powerful because they do lead to success, but you have to be very clear that, are you being honest? And if you are being honest, you're putting everything, you're outing yourself, and you're opening yourself up for reflection and feedback. And being part of support groups has been really crucial for me because I'm able to then continuously identify my own behaviors and how they're getting in the way, or if I'm numbing out, if I'm seeking escape, if I'm hiding from shame. So when I'm able to out all of those things, it brings it to the forefront and something I can focus on. Recovery isn't about never feeling negative emotions. It's about learning how to process them without turning to destructive habits. So I hope this helps. I've only scratched the surface here because addiction is a journey. It's not a destination like anything else as far as our existence goes in this world. And one of the important things I've learned is healing is an active verb, right? It doesn't mean that we heal. Healing is a process in itself. By focusing on these key areas, hierarchy of relationships, breaking free from enmeshment, reframing how we look at addiction, and prioritizing how we're being aware of these triggers, we're building a life rooted in resilience and hope. So I hope this helps, and please subscribe or share with others if you find it to be helpful.